You follow the to-do list. You care deeply, and you want to do this season in life well, so well. But there's still this quiet pressure that's building underneath it all, the unspoken fear of letting people down, the tension between being productive and being present with the people around you, the weight of doing more when what you really long for is to simply rest, to be. In this episode, we're unpacking the quiet yes, the kind that changes everything without anyone else even knowing. But you know. So if you're craving interior peace, clarity, and the courage to rest in God's design for you, then this is a conversation you don't want to miss. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Persistence in Prayer podcast hosted by Catholic mindset coach, wife, mother, educator, and speaker Kylie Hine. Kylie is passionate about helping you deepen your relationship with God through the power of prayer. This podcast is a space for high achievers who want to do it all, but also want to prioritize their spiritual life and grow in faith. Join us as we explore the beauty of persistence in prayer and the transformative impact it can have on our lives. Get ready to discover practical tips, insights, and inspiration to help you develop a daily prayer practice and cultivate a deeper sense of trust in God's plan for your life. Let's journey together towards a more fulfilled and faithful life as we invite the Holy Spirit in. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Persistence in Prayer. I am very excited to be joined by my dear friend, Nikki D'Souza. Nikki is a Catholic educator and the creator of Canadian Catholic Coach. With over a decade of experience in the classroom, she's passionate about the power of mindset and believes that when we renew our minds, we unlock the freedom to live as God created us to. She has been married for 5 years and lives with her husband in Ontario, Canada. She believes that sometimes the most powerful yes is the quiet one, the one that changes you from the inside out. Nikki, I am so excited. Thank you for agreeing to be here today.
Thank you so much for having me. And anyone who ends up watching this on video, we match. We are wearing my wedding color, which is like dusty rose mauve. So that's super exciting.
It's so funny just to have flipped on the camera today and seen that. You guys might recognize Nikki if you ever came to some of the free workshops that I used to host. Nikki was a co-host with me. We met through Metanoia Catholic way back when, before they even had certification. And she's been such a gift in my life, both educators and being in Canada. I know for me, Nikki, when I was in the stress of Christmas time or the end of the year, it wasn't quite as crazy for you. So you would coach me, and then I'd be out of the stress and you'd be entering into it that crazy time of year, and we'd swap. So you've just been such a gift in my life.
Oh, ditto. And I told Kylie this, so I'll share this with your listeners. I coach in 12-week packages, and my week 12 email will always include, and if you want to consider further coaching, please reach out to Kylie Hine, and I will put her website in because I just think the work that she does is absolutely incredible. And so if you're listening to this and you haven't signed up for a consult with Kylie, just do that. Put that on your to-do list.
Oh, you are the best. Nikki was my very first ever paid coaching client. We did 12 weeks together and it was so fun. I'm going to pull the teacher card. We're going to start this episode a little bit different. So I'm going to do rapid fire, like first day of school questions. What is
Perfect.
your favorite thing to teach?
I love to teach French, specifically French grammar, like le passé composé, the past tense. I just find it so interesting. I do also love the fact that you can have rules that you can apply. Yeah, I love teaching the French language. It's really fun.
Yeah, you're my person I go to when I can't pronounce things. Give us a fun fact about you.
I was born in Bahrain, and most people don't know where that is. And it's not too far from Saudi Arabia. So I was born there. I don't remember anything about that country because we immigrated from Bahrain to Canada when I was 6. And for myself, my memories start around the age of 7 and they're fuzzy at best. But yeah, I just think that's kind of interesting.
That is very interesting. How old were your siblings? Do you have one sibling? Two.
I have 2 siblings. I'm the eldest. So my sister was born in Mumbai because there was the Gulf War going on at the time in 91. And my brother was actually born in Canada. He's the only Canadian born in our entire family, actually, extended and immediate.
What are you looking forward to this upcoming school year?
Luckily for us, at the time of this recording, it's July. So my summer has just started, and I'm very grateful for that. So I haven't even thought about the school year, but I am going to be teaching religion and French come the fall, which is my second teachable. And I'll be teaching grade 12 for the first time. And while I'm a little bit nervous about them being mark hungry or mark focused because of their college and university applications, I do think the conversation around faith and life and bringing up some of the mindset work to help them, I think that's going to be really enriching for me as an educator and in this new chapter of year 14 of education.
Absolutely. Okay. Last random question. I know it's summer and you will go back to the school year later than we will here in the States. But from your past experience, what is the hardest part from a teacher's perspective of the transition from summer to school year?
100% the schedule change in the early mornings. I'm neither a morning nor a night owl. Like I do 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. with a nap, with chai. So I thrive with sleeping in. So when you go back to school and you're doing 6 a.m. mornings, it's brutal. I remember, and I know this will be the case when I go back in September, the first 2 weeks you're sleeping at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. because your body is just going into the shock of the early mornings.
Yeah, I was laughing just because I know that about you. I know that mornings are not your favorite.
Not at all.
Okay. In your bio, you say that sometimes the most powerful yes is the quiet one. What do you mean by a quiet yes? And can you give us an example in your own life?
Yeah, I think sometimes people think that the big yes is the one that you say on stage or at the altar. So, getting married, we recently just finished a bunch of grads, like, yes to further education. But in my experience, it's the quiet interior yes that no one else sees that ends up shifting everything. So, the yes to going to mass, the yes to your faith, a decision that you make in your mind, in your heart, which frankly is all decisions before you sign the check, make the payment, call that person up. I think those are the quiet yeses between you and God that change everything because it's that journeying into trust, it's that leap into faith. And then comes the external yes of whatever that may look like. And for me, that quiet yes came in a couple ways. One, it was just the realization when I was an adult that my parents wouldn't be around forever. And at one point, my faith is my responsibility.
Mm.
And maybe it was my mom saying it, or it was a quiet realization, or maybe both. Maybe she said it, maybe I blew it off. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like mom and dad aren't going to be around forever. Like I have to figure out my faith on my own one day, or that family mass that we always go to, we were like a 5 PM mass kind of people and later switched to 10 AM Sundays. Like, that's not a forever thing. So then just kind of the quiet yes of being like, "Yeah, I'll be faithful." Or the quiet yes to deciding the night before that you're gonna wake up and go to a morning mass even though you're not a morning person. And the quiet yes to coaching was a big one, like, just saying yes to the training, yes to the creation of Canadian Catholic Coach was all a quiet yes internally before it became an external, let me call my girlfriend who's a graphic designer and get a logo. All of that was internal before it became a manifestation externally.
I think that's so beautiful. One, you said, "My faith is my responsibility." I think that's my quote that I always talk about the Post-it notes, things that I take away, whether it's from interviews or from classes. I love that one. I think it's so good for us to remember that our faith is our responsibility. It's not someone else's. No matter what age we are, we have to take action. And the quiet yes is that act of the will that happens first. And when we make the commitment, then the Lord gives us the grace to follow through. Now, we don't always act on that grace, but He does give it to us. And I know you've done this in a lot of ways in your life, as you just mentioned. And I know that you have been an inspiration for my quiet yes so many times. I don't know if you remember this, but we went through Purgative Way together. And then there was a coaching certification. And I was still teaching And the certification process was going to happen during volleyball season, and I was a head volleyball coach. And it cost a lot of money. And I remember thinking, I can't do it. And I was so bummed. I just felt like I was entirely left out. I was like not part of the group anymore. And months went by and you got your certification, and I was still teaching. And I was really struggling because I felt like the Lord was calling me out of teaching, but I didn't know what I was going to do. And so months went by. And then another round of certification came up. And I was praying about it and making all of the excuses. And you had randomly reached out to me, and I was like, "Yeah, I just feel like I'm not really part of the group." And you just responded so bluntly, and you're like, "Well, actually, that's just a thought." Like, it's just a thought that you're not part of the group. You actually are. And you listed all of these reasons why I needed to shift my mindset. And I was like, you know what? You're right. This is just me having a perception about a situation that actually isn't true. It wasn't true, and that really helped me shift and be able to say yes to this calling to pursue coaching and lead to all of this. So, again, I don't know if you even remember that, but that simple text coaching that you gave me that one day, that mindset shift of that's just a thought helped me so much. And I'd love to hear you talk more about mindset and how women can utilize this and what the effects of that mindset shift are. So maybe you have some examples in your classroom or in your coaching that you could give us.
Yeah. I think with women, we're in our heads so much. And I would say probably even more than men, because sometimes my husband and I would leave a dinner, and it's so interesting how I will have picked up on so many little nuances around the table, and he would just have had no clue unless it was so obvious, like a couple bickering very evidently. So, as women, yeah, we're very perceptive, we're very intuitive. I do think that that is a gift that the Lord has given us. The backside of that, or the vice of that, is we often ruminate, we often worry, we often go down spirals. So, the gift of coaching is that it helps you live with a well managed mind. And we've been able to do great things even with our minds managed at 10%. Like, it's incredible before coaching what I was able to accomplish. But now after coaching, I'm able to do that with just the interior piece. So, two questions I always like to ask myself are, what's true here? So, going back to the basics of what are the facts? What did this person say or do? What's the fact for me? And the other question I like to ask is, what else is possible here? So, for example, when we have somebody that was very short with us, it's very easy for us to go down the rabbit hole of like, he or she is mad at me. He or she didn't like that I did X. And while that may be true, I like to ask myself, like, what else is possible here? Okay, they may be having a hard day. This may have nothing to do with me. And it just sometimes lessens the burden, and I sometimes still go back to, "But she's still probably mad at me."
Mhm.
And I just allow myself to give airtime to the other possibilities, and in some situations, it's easier than others. In some cases, the weight feels less heavy or the options feel equal as opposed to one over the other. So with women, I find that coaching just helps them to create the space where they don't sound crazy, because a coach just holds that sacred silence, that space to allow you to thought dump everything. And then they're able to show you what you're missing, a word that came up like 14 times that you didn't even realize, the other side of the coin. So, yeah, I just find it such a gift for myself and to be able to hold that space for other people.
Do you find yourself incorporating this more into your classroom?
Yeah, 100%. Something I'm really grateful for that we've been moving towards with professional development in terms of schools is growth versus fixed mindset. And the conversation around that, even for educators, because we're so quick to put kids into groups because we almost have to for diagnostic reasons. But like, he's a math kid, he's a smart kid. And even for ourselves of like, I can or can't do that, as opposed to here's where I am on the spectrum of 0 to 10 being mastery. And I can probably move myself up a notch. This child probably can move up a notch, but it doesn't have to be in these fixed categories of black and white. And looking at things as a spectrum of here's where I am, here's how I can grow has been super, super helpful as a starting point. And then add on the layer of coaching of being able to sit with students and being like, okay, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about yourself as a learner in this has been really, really huge.
And I think what makes you so great at this is you always do your own work. You get coached and you get coached and you get coached, and you've been coached by people from different coaching backgrounds as well, which I think is really cool. But when you come into a session, you get coached. And even if whatever the thing that was irritating you or bothering you was, doesn't completely go away, you can always recognize that you've made progress and say, okay, I'm going to go self coach myself on this some more. And if it's still frustrating you, then you go to another coaching session and you bring the same issue again so that you can just continue to make progress and you don't let it stop you like, oh, well, I got coached and it didn't work. So I guess that just isn't helpful, right? You're like, no, I made progress. And I think that's something that both women and students need to pay attention to as well is it's not about fixing everything all at once. It's can we make progress? Can we go a little bit further than we were before or clear up something?
Yeah, going back to 10% better, 10% better. And I even use this during COVID teaching. So if anyone's listening and you were either a teacher or a parent during COVID, first of all, God bless you. You've made it through. It's nothing short of a miracle. And it was just so weird because there were no rules back in 2020 March when it first hit. And every semester looked wildly different of asynchronous and cohort A and cohort B were coming in. And my mindset was always a little bit of something is better than a whole lot of nothing. So I would tell my students, listen, this is a weird time, but I just want to encourage you to still log in, do your asynchronous or your live online coursework. Keep yourself as regular as possible because then you're still learning, you're still challenging your mind, you're not going down the rabbit hole of TikTok and Instagram for hours on end. And I said, and even if you learn just a little bit of math, like the quadratic formula and three French verbs, and that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, like we'll start with that. And so it's the same with coaching. It's not that we're going to be this divine creature by the time we die. Like, if the Lord takes me tomorrow, there's still a heck of a lot of stuff I need to work on. And maybe people that I have needed to forgive or someone that I probably ticked off. But it's the idea that with my time on earth, I just strive for virtue. And that's another huge thing that coaching helps us to do is to build that bridge from where we are to where we want to be in a virtuous way and having someone to guide and lead us there. So if we're just 10% better from where we were, I think it's a huge, huge jump.
Absolutely. I think this is true in coaching, it's true in education, and it's also true in our prayer life that consistency is so important. It's showing up every day and not waiting for the tragedy to strike to be ready, or going all in and spending 3 hours on something one day and then not doing it for 2 more weeks. I'm part of our Legion of Mary, and yesterday, part of the reading in our handbook talked about the Roman legionaries and how they never took a night off. If they stopped to camp, they dug the trenches, they prepared for an attack, even if they were only going to stay there one night. They put in all of the work, they did all the things. And it just reminded me that we have to be willing to show up and put in that effort every single day, whether God feels super close or he feels far away, or we're in a time of peace or we're in a time of sorrow, that commitment, and it doesn't have to be huge, but that commitment to making ourselves available for the Lord to work in us, whether, again, that's through coaching, it's through our mental prayer time, or through even just taking care of our families. giving him the opportunity to work is so important. If this conversation is resonating with you and you've been feeling like something's got to shift, I want to invite you to book a free confidence and clarity call with me. This isn't a sales pitch, it's a safe place for us to talk about what's keeping you stuck, whether that's overthinking, burnout, or just not feeling like yourself in this season. So if you feel like you're functioning, but you're not really flourishing, if you feel like you've been pouring yourself out for everyone else, but wondering, what about me, God? And this call is for you. So head on over to the link in the show notes and click on Confidence and Clarity Call to grab your spot. I would love to hear your story.
Yeah, and that's something I definitely struggle with sometimes because, as Kylie knows, and now your listeners are going to know, I really crave comfort and I crave ease. And anytime anything is an inconvenience, I tend to throw a mental temper tantrum. I'm pretty good with the physical ones now that I'm almost 36 years old. But yeah, when something is inconvenient, my husband, who's phlegmatic, is super great at the self sacrifice. He's already a saint in the making. But I will struggle with that. So I find that during those times, I just ask the Lord, I'm very honest in prayer and I'm like, Lord, I really don't want to, like, help. And I do that especially when people are driving me absolutely bananas. So, as a teacher, there are all sorts of people that you work with. Some are so lovely, and some you're like, in what dimension were you thinking about that? And I'm just honest with the Lord, and I'm like, Lord, you made this person, and my tolerance level is at a -5. So help me. And so it just comes to that reliance on his grace. And when you're having a really tough time, a really tough week, with summer schedules being all over the place, going back to that reliance on grace and going back to the sacraments, I find is really, really helpful as opposed to white knuckling it. And of course, getting coached so you can get your mind clear on stuff.
This fits so well into my prayer meditation this morning. So I was praying with the scripture where Jesus needs a reprieve and he goes in the boat to have this silent, quiet, alone time. And the crowds see him and they start to follow him and they even start to go to the other side of the lake so that when he arrives, it's like they need things, right? They need spiritually filled, they need all these things. It's like he wanted this moment of reprieve. And as I was praying, it reminded me of when I was a kid and we would get home from church. So we'd go to the 11 a.m. mass, we'd get home about 12:15, and everybody's hungry, right? So we'd get out of the car and we'd go inside and my mom would stay in the car. She would sit in there like, want to just sit in the quiet or read the bulletin. She needed a reprieve. She needed a moment, which I think as teachers, we know sometimes we need a moment, or as moms, we need a moment. We lock ourselves in the bathroom and we even tell our kids, like, I just need a minute, or our spouses, I need a minute. But sometimes that minute is not near long enough. Just like for Jesus, he went for the reprieve, but all the people just followed him. And that's what we did to my mom. We'd go climb back in the car with her and say, are you cooking lunch? What's for lunch? We need this. We need this. And so she never really got the reprieve that she really desired. And again, it reminds me of that sensuality piece, that wanting the comfort, wanting the easy thing that I fall into so often as well. But Jesus shows us when we feel like we have nothing left to give, what he did was, it says he showed them compassion. And I'm not great at this, but it reminded me of his small yes, of saying, I'm going to show them compassion. And when we feel like we have absolutely nothing left to give, we're entirely spent. If we can give that silent interior yes to give more, the Lord fills us with that more to be able to give back to the people around us. So I'm still working on that. But what you said just reminded me so much of that, of what came to me in my own personal prayer this morning. And what happens after that is not only does the Lord speak to the crowds and he heals them, right? There's all these miraculous healings, but then we also see he feeds them. He heals them and then he feeds them with the loaves and the fishes. So when we're feeling like we're stuck or we're overstimulated and we just want the easy way and we don't get enough of it, we can give that little yes and the Lord gives us more.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely feel like I struggle with irritation as my go-to emotion.
Choleric.
Yeah, choleric, 100%. I was constantly irritated before coaching. Now I feel like it's definitely dropped because, as I said, I try to live my life with a well managed mind. I do what I need to do to just be clean in spaces. And kids, God bless them, like they can't read a room. Right? Like, they're not like adults who's like, "Hey, when somebody walks in with a bag of groceries, you don't ask what's for dinner, you help with groceries." And that comes later in life when you have teens or preteens or adult children, but young children? Like, when I used to teach 5th grade, it was my favorite grade to teach, and because 'cause they're so fun, they have a great sense of humor, they understand how to use puns and sarcasm, but again, couldn't read a room. So, you'd be walking with, like, 50 things, and they'd be beside you like this little, like, bird on your shoulder, like, "Miss, what about when are we gonna you said" or my absolute favorite, when you ream them out for how they behaved with a supply teacher, and you're like, "On Tuesday, Mrs. McInervy watched the class and she said," and you have a kid raise her hand, be like, "Actually, it was Thursday," and you're just, like, losing your mind. So, yeah, it's just a reminder of being fed with the Eucharist, but one of my favorite quotes is, "At the end of our rope, we will find the hem of his garment." And I always found that to be so beautiful that when we are just reaching the very end of our human capacity and ability, instead of doing more, we need to lean in more. Lean in more to grace, lean in more to the sacraments, and just pause and step back and ask ourselves, like, what do I need to be able to show up in empathy and compassion? Do I need to go to confession? Do I need to be at a holy hour? Do I need to pop on and get coached? And obviously, not waiting till our well is dry, like just recognizing the seasons that we're in and having that be a regular part of our routine. And I think that's honestly what helped me shift from being irritated 78% of the day to at least rolling it back to a solid, I would say it's like 40%. And even then, I'm just able to not ruminate on the irritation. Like I'm able to snap out of it relatively quickly.
I love that. That's love that we can show when we are irritated. I'll give you an example of when I epically failed at this. So last night, we are talking about kids not being able to read the room. It's late. My husband had gone out to our acreage to pick all the vegetables. And I'm talking, it's like already 8:30 at night. We had a baseball get together. We get home, and my son had taken a 2-hour nap. Okay. I mean, like, you could not wake him. So it's time to start getting ready for bed. And he's all over the place. The kids are being kids. So it's not that they're entirely not listening. They're kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing, but they're giggling and dragging it out. And it's taking significantly longer than it should. And I'm trying to get the dishes done. And the thing I had asked them to do still wasn't done. And I started getting a little more stern with them. And a little bit later, my daughter walks up to me and she's like, "Mom, do you need a hug?" And I was like, "No, I don't need a hug. I need you to pick up your shoes off the floor. This is the third time I've asked you." And she was like so crestfallen. And she's like, "I just was seeing if you needed something." And she stormed off to the bathroom and then she went up to her room. And I was like, "Oh, I'm the worst mom." And so I really just prayed with that. And again, that when you feel like you've reached your limits, can we just pause and ask the Lord to give us more? And I was like, "Oh, Lord, like you were offering me love and compassion in that moment, and I did not offer it back to my daughter." But I am better able to do that now than I could before, just like you said. And it helps me to reflect on I was focused on the doing. I was focused on the task, the finishing the dishes, and not on the being in the present moment. And that doesn't mean that we don't do the dishes, right? We still do the dishes, but we pay attention and are open to the ways that the Lord wants to call us into the present and to recognize those precious gifts, like my daughter wanting to give me a hug, because in my mind, it was like, oh, she's just trying to get out of not doing the thing that I wanted her to do. And as I reflect on it, that wasn't her intent. She was like, oh, mom's kind of frustrated right now. Maybe I should give her a hug, because that's probably something that I have said to her is, oh, you seem really upset. Do you need a hug? Would you like a hug? So, for the women who feel stuck in the doing part, like their mind goes to the to-do list, the striving, the pressure, I know you're choleric and you have high expectations for yourself and the people around you. What does it look like to start embracing that being piece?
Yeah, so that's a huge piece. First, I'll ask you the question. Do you find that when you're ruminating on, like, I'm a bad mom, that you're able to snap out of that faster? I'm just curious, like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes,
okay,
I
good.
do. I'm able to stop and pray and ask for the intercession of the Blessed Mother, or I'm able to just I'm so grateful for this. I am so much more aware of my imperfection or my sin in the moment than I used to be. I used to always see it as something that the other person did. And I am so much more aware now through coaching and just through constant prayer. And I think just having a better relationship with the Lord of not beating myself up, because I understand that that's not what God is doing and that's not what He wants for me either. He wants me to be aware. And so I am able to much more quickly snap out of that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Going back to your question of who am I being? I think that's a great question to ask ourselves constantly, and especially in the season of change. So, if you're listening to this and you're going back to the school year as a teacher or as a parent, like asking yourself, like, who do I want to be? How do I want to show up in this season? And we may have lofty plans, like I'm going to get up every day and do my prayer before my kids get up. Or teachers, famous one, I'm going to be on top of my marking this year and on top of my grading this year. And that may or may not be the case. But I think when we ask ourselves, like, how do I want to show up to my students in my classroom, in my home, then we're able to really go back to the virtues and the character traits. So I want to show up patient, or I want to show up compassionate. I want to show up caring. And from that space, I think we're able to do the doing in a place that's much more aligned with who God is calling us to be. And when I think of some of my favorite people in my life and some of the people that showed up, it's not simply everything that they've done, it's truly how they are being. So I'll give you an example. So I married a gem of a human being, and I'll just focus on my mother in law, who's also a gem of a human being. And it's not simply the fact that she leaves us with bags and bags of food every time we come over. Or when I come over, it's a little something like this. So we leave and she'll give me a scarf or jewelry and food. And that is the doing, which is amazing. But her being is one of true generosity. She doesn't give those things and then leave a backhanded comment like, oh, it's because you don't cook, or anything to the extent that makes me feel small or unvaluable. She gives from a place that really highlights, I want to show up as gift. And so when we think about the kind of person we want to be, I think the doing will simply be an extension of that.
I love that. The question that came to me to reflect on is what most often keeps me from being, and then whatever virtue you're working on, what keeps me from being patient? What keeps me from being compassionate? And that working backward, because I think often the sin occurs far before we think it does.
Mhm.
It's like that Lord lead me not into temptation. How often am I putting myself in this situation of temptation because it leads to the lack of compassion, it leads to the lack of virtue, but we don't ever work backward and so we stay stuck. So when we're thinking about how is the Lord calling me to be in a particular circumstance, I think can be helpful too. Like, how is the Lord calling me to be in my marriage right now? And then looking at when does this happen the most often that I don't act that way? So, for example, the Lord is calling me to be patient in my marriage. Well, when am I the least patient with my husband? And what happens before that? And what leads to my agitation? Or we talk a lot with temperaments. What is the trigger that led me to that? Or what ideal condition was missing that is leading to this constant frustration or lack of patience? So good.
Yeah, I definitely think that's super helpful. And just asking yourself key questions like, what am I thinking or believing about myself or about this other person? And this is the harder one that you'll really have to take to prayer is what am I afraid of? And sometimes we don't want to sit there because it can lead to great discomfort. And that's why doing it with a coach or in adoration can be really helpful. Because sometimes what comes up is I'm afraid that we won't have enough money. I'm afraid that our child will not have this opportunity because he's really waiting on signing up or he doesn't want to do the testing because of a label. I'm just speaking from experience of having worked with parents, and sometimes parents aren't sitting on the same side of the table around seeking help for their child. And that the fighting or the just not being on the same side of the table really comes from them just looking at the situation completely differently. So when we look at times when we weren't being in virtue and we were really being in vice, so for myself, like irritation, after the situation, I can ask myself, like, what did I think about that person? Well, they should have known they were wasting my time. They weren't prepared. They took me for granted. And then I'm able to go back to the questions of what are the facts? Is this true? What else is possible? And take my irritation, hopefully from a 10 to a 6, and then from a 6 to a 4, and ask for forgiveness from the Lord, either in confession or just in private prayer. And then maybe go back to a place of neutrality and eventually a place of virtue.
Yeah. Another question you ask sometimes is, am I giving everything equal airtime? So the positive moments and the moments that led us to irritation or frustration, because when we're reflecting on our day, our brains naturally go towards the one that irritate us the most or the things that are more frustrating. And we sometimes negate the beautiful moments or downplay them in our minds. And so we have to be intentional. And so I always love when you ask me that question, like, are you giving this equal airtime? Just ask yourself if you were going to list out all of the things that were really great and all the things that were not so great, which ones are playing in your mind? And it's always the negative ones, which is probably why I'm having that conversation with you because I'm stuck in that loop. Sometimes we can get ourselves out of it and self-coaching is wonderful, but sometimes we're just stuck and we need someone else to just give us a shift and help us to change that perspective a little bit.
Yeah, and as a melancholic, I also struggle with that. I have a high desire for excellence. I don't like perfection, but maybe in some areas perfection. And I started a new role this year as a school chaplain, and it was new. I was teaching for 12 years, and then year number 13 brought into it the chaplaincy role. And I would, at the end of a week or end of a season, be like, oh, I missed this, this, and this. And I forgot to catch up with this kid. And this email from this workshop wasn't replied to. And I probably missed the deadline. Like, as someone being in a new role, like, I didn't allow myself to be a beginner. I didn't give myself any grace for balls to drop. And it was either coaching or prayer that had me ask the question, going back to what you said, are you giving things equal airtime? Are you giving any credit to the fact that you visited this teacher, sent an email to that parent, organized this retreat? And I asked myself, like, what is this serving? And I think it was like maybe not wanting other people to be disappointed or myself to feel disappointment. So I put all the light on everything that I had dropped and or missed and or forgotten. And so that question sometimes of like, why am I choosing to sit here? And it's usually protection against XYZ. I'm protecting myself against feeling disappointment. I'm protecting myself against the angry parent email because I've already figured that they may be angry. And then just allowing yourself to feel that emotion and then giving yourself the grace, self forgiveness, and then the equal airtime to like, okay, Lord, like I can't see it right now. So, Holy Spirit, please help me see where I have shown up well in this role. Where have I shown up in virtue? How have I grown from September to November in this role? And that's been really helpful.
You mentioned the fear of letting other people down, which is one that I really struggle with because I want to show up for other people. And sometimes we can have this thought of, oh, I'm going to let everyone down. And I know you and I have had this conversation of going back to, okay, let's define that word. Who is everyone? And I always come back to this. I replay it in my mind whenever I'm struggling with this. I'm going to let everyone down. Who is everyone? Because sometimes it's actually one or two people. We probably aren't letting them down because usually the people we're worried about letting down the most are people who love and care about us and they want what is best for us. And then also, what has the Lord asked of me? Because who would I rather let down? Would I rather let down the Lord by not giving him my yes and what he's calling me to? Or would I rather potentially let down? We might not even actually be letting them down. This one other person who actually loves and cares about me, or this stranger. Which one do we want to choose?
Yeah, and I know that we had coached a lot about that when you wanted to do the switch from teaching to coaching full time
Uh huh.
around letting your parent community down or the students that were depending on you or the girls that you have nurtured. And for myself, it came up not necessarily letting everyone down, but the fear of what other people thought when I switched or because I am not full time, but when I opened up myself as a coach, it was like, oh, what will they think? And the they 9 times out of 10 is always just 1 or 2 people
Mm-hmm.
that always have an opinion, that are always skeptical, that always question things, and that's fine because that's maybe how they navigate the world, but that doesn't have to be the one that's stopping you. So I love that question of like, who would I rather let down? Or simply like, how is the Lord calling me to walk in obedience this season?
Mm-hmm.
And
How
that
can I
just again switches the light. Yeah.
Yeah, how can I do the hard thing? Okay, earlier you told me you love to take naps. You said you will unapologetically choose a nap over a to-do list, which I absolutely love, and especially knowing that you don't like to waste time. So, for the women listening, how do you discern when it's time to take a nap and when it's time to push through the to-do list?
Yeah, I would simply listen to your body and I would ask the question, is me taking the nap me avoiding the hard thing? Like I'm taking it as a form of distraction. I'm taking it to avoid. I'm taking it because the thought of sitting at my computer and sending that email or making that phone call feels incredibly overwhelming. Or I simply just need to let my body rest, recuperate. And I know that this will be the strength that I need to then go back and do that faithfully and do that well. And if you're doing that in discernment with the Holy Spirit, I feel like you'll always feel a sense of conviction one way or the other. And then again, asking for the grace to walk in obedience. If it really is, no, you're taking the nap because the thought of doing this task fills you with so much dread.
Mm, yes, which definitely happens sometimes.
Yes, 100%.
What is one mindset shift that you would like everyone listening to pray for this week?
Oh, that's a really good one.
Or maybe something that you're going to pray for yourself this week?
Yeah. So at the time of this recording, I'm going to be in the States during the 4th of July weekend in Boston, and I'll be with my family. So I think the grace just to be present because family is amazing, but sometimes this extended time together will bring up all sorts of things, all sorts of preferences with how people want to do things, like to do things, and your own, which doesn't usually come up when you're just doing a quick dinner or a quick lunch and you're in and you're out. But when you're with friends like 4 days at a time or a week at a time, things can come up. So perhaps just the mindset of like, Lord, help me to be compassionate
Ooh,
But I think the mindset shift actually what's coming up for me, I got coached on something, and one of the founders of Metanoia Catholic, Aaron Ingold, shared with me a thought that I just absolutely loved, which is that's so on brand. And I think what happened with that is it just took all the pressure off. So maybe that's just a thought that your listeners can steal is like when you're doing something, ask yourself, like, is this on brand for me? Is this something like I normally do? And maybe you're just able to like laugh, lessen up the tension, and then you're able to make a decision on how you want to move forward from there.
I like that. I think for me, my mindset shift that I want to pray for, the grace I want to pray for is the reminder that saying no is often a gift.
Mm,
So saying no, again, going back to that, I don't want to disappoint people. I don't want to let people down. Sometimes saying no is a gift because then we are able to receive what the Lord has next for us. And when we don't say no, we don't have the capacity to receive the thing that He wants to give us next. Saying no also in the situation that's coming up for me is trusting Him and giving the opportunity to someone else. When I take myself out of that situation, it's opening a door for someone else where we are both going to be able to use our gifts more beautifully. And not that we don't have a multitude of gifts, of a variety of gifts, but there are some that each of us uniquely have. And when we can live in that space and operate there, there's so much more fruit than when we're operating out of some of those other things that we can do, but maybe don't do as well or as lovingly or as passionately.
that's beautiful. Are we both choleric? I can't remember.
Yes, primarily choleric.
Okay, I'm choleric melancholic. What are you?
I'm choleric sanguine, but melancholic is also very high for me. I think the sanguine comes up in almost like that ADHD brain of so many thoughts all the time, the bouncing from one thing to the next. So I'm more sanguine in that aspect, but I am much more introverted than the typical sanguine.
Got it. I'm super high sanguine too. The sanguine melancholic always comes up high because it's so funny. Everyone's temperament shows up so differently based on even past experiences and wounds, I would even say. Because as a fellow choleric, I have no problem saying no. I
Which
have
I
no
love
problem
about
being
you.
Homo does not have my number and does not know my name. If I do not want to go to something, I'm like, thank you so much. I won't be able to make it.
And I love that, and I love that you are so direct in things too. It's a beautiful gift that I don't have, I don't think, or maybe just not in the same way that you do, and so, yeah, it is interesting. The temperaments are great at helping us to kind of self-reflect, but we're all still unique humans. So they give us kind of an entry point to start to understand ourselves, but then there's so much more there as we begin to explore.
Yeah, 100%. A funny story is we're on group coaching this morning and somebody got coached on their aunt not paying enough for coaching. So assuming a price and sending money and the coaching was all around how do I bring this up with my aunt? And it's so funny because as a cleric, I'm like, oh, I would totally just call the person like, hey, you're short. Like it would be a non-issue. So it's just really interesting how things that we can sometimes get coached on that is an issue for us or somebody else is not when it comes to different playing fields. So I just find that super interesting.
Yeah, I would be panicking. I'd be like, "No, I don't wanna do it." That's when I would go retreat and take a nap. Even
Yep.
sending out the text message for birthday invitations or things like that, I'll just tell my husband, I'm like, I can do it, but I really just don't have the capacity for it. Emails, things like that, they are so draining to me, and I don't know why. One-on-one conversation, I can live there all day, but sending emails, my husband laughs at me, like, making phone calls, he will tell me, "Put on your big girl pants and just do it," or I'm that person who would rather walk around the store for an hour than ask someone for help. Unless I'm with another person. If someone with me needs to find something, I can go up and ask.
Oh,
It's
that
just
is
that place where I
again,
operate.
yeah. And it again shows the difference between having your temperament, which is so helpful, but just knowing personality differences and preferences because I have zero problem walking up to anybody and being like, "Hi, I'm looking for the nails." And I also have very, I guess, high embarrassment tolerance because if by chance that person didn't work there or I got it wrong, I'd be like, "Okay, sorry." Like, I wouldn't then be like, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I assumed that person worked at Target." So that it is a gift in its own way. And I think sometimes the curse, as I said prior, or the challenge is definitely the high expectation and the high irritation because my Achilles heel is I always want service at 100%. So if I walk into a Home Depot and it is an employee, I very much expect them to know where things are and serve at the highest capacity. So, struggling with those expectations, but definitely not with asking for help. So it is funny sometimes, and maybe that'll be an invitation to our listeners is just observe the differences in temperament when you're with family and friends at the beach, at the grocery store this summer. Like, what are things that you have no problem doing that they seem to struggle with, or vice versa? And it'll just make for a fun observation game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of that with you. You always inspire me because, again, the asking for help, like group coaching for you. You're like, raise my hands, coach me, coach me. And I'm like, oh, I have to do it in front of the whole group. I have to go to that vulnerable place in front of all these people, which is so funny because I share vulnerable stories on the podcast all of the time. And if I'm in a room full of people or if I'm speaking at an event, I have no problem sharing the vulnerable stories. But if it's coaching, I'm like, ooh, do I want to do that in front of all of these people? I have to coach myself on it before I get coached. Which
Amazing.
is so silly. It's so silly. But again, just that different wiring in the way that the Lord made us. Okay, one more question before we get to our closing. For someone who is struggling to believe that she is God's masterpiece, what would you say to her?
Simply that you are. Like, if we look at snowflakes and animals and we take so much marvel at them, how wonderful it is that you are here and that you are made. I would encourage that person to use the summer or whenever they're listening to this to reflect on Psalm 139. It's actually my psalm of the summer.
Mhm.
It's something that I am committing to memory, that and Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd. And just to recognize what is the Lord saying about how I am created. And with that, I am offering a summer intensive which is 6 weeks to discover your unique design when it comes to your temperaments. And we'll be covering it from all sorts of angles, from our motivations to our triggers to our weaknesses and our strengths. And I'm so excited to work with women. It's going to be starting July 14th. It will be Mondays at noon. And if you're listening to this and the timing has already lapsed, you're still welcome to reach out and do some temperament work with me. It's my favorite work to do with women because the aha moments and simply having language for what's going on in our lives, I think is the most empowering thing. Having words and expressions and just knowing that you're not alone and that there are different people going through exactly what you're going through is just incredible work that I love to do.
Yeah, and I've done some of this work with Nikki. She ran this intensive before, and I was able to show up for some of the nights. And even though I do some of this exact same work with my own clients, and I've been through it before, every time you go through it, you take away something new, whether it's someone different leading it. And so you just have a slightly different perspective, or you're just looking at it from a different angle. Maybe you're analyzing it more from your marriage perspective or your work perspective. The Lord is just always going to bring you something new. And Nikki's so great at helping women to walk through that. And also, I second Psalm 139. That was the first scripture verse when I was 23 and I started spiritual direction that my spiritual director gave me. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone back to it. And I think part of that's because it's in the Ignatian exercises, but it truly does just remind you of who you are and that God had you in mind well before you were ever in the womb. And so he knew everything that you were going to do in this lifetime, all of the imperfections, all of the mistakes, all the mess ups. And he loved you so much and desired to create you anyway. What a beautiful gift. So, with that, where can people find you, Nikki?
So I'm on Instagram at Canadian Catholic Coach. I'm on the Metanoia Catholic website under their coaches directory under Nikki D'Souza. And I'm sure you'll have everything linked up in the show notes. So I know people will find me. And I'm looking forward to connecting with them.
Yes. And I always close with a prayer tip or a scripture verse. So we've got one more psalm for you. One thing I asked of the Lord, that will I seek after, to live in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. Why is this your favorite or one of your favorites?
Yeah, that one is absolutely my favorite because it just reminds us of what is the purpose of being on earth. It's to create space for God so that we can enjoy him forever in heaven. And we're in this Jubilee year of hope. We're pilgrims of hope. And it's a reminder that hope is a person, like hope is Jesus Christ. And so if we're hoping to be in heaven, it's not just simply this eternal bliss. Heaven is forever with Jesus. Are we able to seek Jesus in the here and the now so that we can enjoy him forever in heaven? So if we look at this earthly pilgrimage as simply that, Lord, grant me the desire to seek your face above all else, above my desire for wealth, above my desire that this season in my life be organized. Grant me the desire to seek your face. And we genuinely do go seek his face in scripture, in sacrament, in each other. I think that will make heaven just the natural next step for us, where the Lord can say, I know you because we spent this time on earth together, and it won't be this foreign relationship.
So beautiful. So well said. As always, you're always so well spoken. Such a gift to me in my life. And I know that this episode will be a gift to everyone who listens. Be sure to go check out Nikki. And Nikki, I'm sure I will see you before too long.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Beautiful souls, thank you again for journeying with me. If you have been blessed by this episode, it would mean the world to me if you would leave a review. Be sure to screenshot it, share it on your social media stories, and don't forget to tag me on Instagram or Facebook at Kylie M. Hine. Stay persistent in prayer, protect your peace, and as always, share the light of Christ with everyone around you.